How's it going, guys, and welcome back to another week and another Destiny 2 build video from your boy. This week, we're taking a pass at a Titan build that I have been very excited to make. Haven't been able to make it due to a particular fragment being bugged and out of the game since the launch of the season. So now we actually get to take a pass at it, and it's probably one of my favorite builds that I've played with in the past, and it converted over pretty well when Solar 3.0 rolled around. So we're going to take a look at that this week. Next week, we're going to do a Warlock build. I haven't decided between two that I'm going to do. I'm going to ask probably tomorrow in the Discord server about which one I should do. And then I'm going to make it. And then after that, it's Grandmaster Season 6 Grandmaster videos. And then I'm going to start working on Arc 3.0 recommendations. With that being said, though, if you like the video, please leave a like. Comment, what you want to particularly see or, things to make this build better. And please, if you do like this type of content, please consider subscribing. We are very close to 500. Now, with that being said, let's take a look at the class setup first. For our class setup, I ran Towering Barricade because extra cover is always nice, especially when trying to get a teammate's res. Throwing Hammer because bonk. Solar Grenades to apply more Scorch in a larger area. And finally, the Hammer of Soul Super because it has very good ad clearing potential. First aspect we're going to look at is Soul Invictus. Solar ability Final Blows, Hammer of Soul Impacts, and defeating Scorch targets create Sunspots. Your abilities regenerate faster and your super drains more slowly while standing in a sunspot. Sunspots apply Scorch and deal damage to targets inside. Entering a sunspot applies Restoration. To me, this is easily one of the top 3 aspects from Solar 3.0 across all 3 classes. Defeating a Scorch target to get a Sunspot is very easy to do from things from, the subclass itself, as well as to the weapon perk Incandescent. Even though the ability regen got nerfed when we came into Solar 3.0, it is still a great utility to have and to use. Finally, when we talk about the Restoration, it's very good at keeping you alive and will be very good when we talk about the exotic that we're going to be pairing with this build. Second aspect is going to be Roaring Flames. Final blows with solar abilities or ignitions increase the damage of your solar abilities. Stacks 3 times, and while Roaring Flame is active, your uncharged melee attack deals solar damage and scorches targets. This will help our abilities out by giving them the more damage, as well as being able to apply that Scorch to targets and being able to get more sunspots in the long run, so that this way, other things later on in this build can work the way they are supposed to work. First fragment we're going to look at is Ember of Torches. Powered melee attacks against combatants make you and nearby allies radiant. Since we're going for a support style build, let's be able to buff our allies constantly from a melee that we can pick up and then, keep applying that 25% buff to help them deal that damage to those targets. Next, we have Ember of Tempering. Solar weapon final blows grant you and your allies increased recovery for a short duration. Stacks 3 times. While Ember of Tempering is active, your weapons have increased airborne effectiveness minus 10 recovery. This gives you 10 recovery per stack for a total of 30. If you're all running like a higher to max recovery, this won't be as helpful to you, but to your allies or to yourself if you're running a lesser tier like I am, if you're running a tier 6 build, 60 recovery, this is a 17% recovery rate. With Emperor of Tempering maxed out at 3 stacks, this would boost you to 90 recovery, which goes from 17 to 34% recovery. This doubles your recovery rate for 3 solar weapon final blows. So, for example, if you're using a solar weapon, let's take, for example, the battle rifle, the BXR. You get 3 kills, you now have plus 30 to your recovery stat, and you have now doubled your recovery rate for the next, I believe it's 5-6 seconds. It's not a lot, but it's enough to give you that bonus and make a little use of it. But of course, keep getting solar kills. You're going to keep refreshing this buff and potentially giving it longer. Ember of Solace. Radiant and Restoration effects applied to you have increased duration. I use this because the increased duration to the buffs we apply to ourselves is really nice. Of course, you can easily swap this for Ember of Imperium if you are more comfortable with that. I'm more comfortable with Solace because I don't always get that next kill to keep my buffs going. And finally, we have Ember of Benevolence. Applying Restoration, Cure, or Radiant to allies grants increased grenade, melee, and class ability regeneration for a short duration. This is a minus 10 discipline. This was disabled for the first 3 weeks of the season, so I had to wait to make this build. And, any other build related to this. The ability regen given with Fragment, with the regen from the Sunspots from Soul Invictus, is very good. So anytime we make our allies radiant or heal them in any way, it gives us this buff. which leads us to our exotic for this particular build. We are going to be looking at Phoenix Cradle, which comes with the exotic armor perk Beacons of Empowerment. Sol Invictus lasts twice as long. Allies who pass through your sunspots are granted Sol Invictus and Solar Restoration. Without even looking at the support role with the Restoration, getting your Sol Invictus buff for 10 seconds instead of 5 is great for that ability regen. Now, when your allies pass through those sunspots, they're also going to get that 10 seconds of Solar Invictus as well as the Restoration. Once they get that Restoration, Ember of Benevolence will activate, giving you the bonus to your ability regen alongside the regen bonus from Solar Invictus from you walking through your own sunspot, allowing you to get your abilities back really fast. As long as you can make a fair amount of sunspots and your allies can heal constantly running through in and out of them, you're going to have your abilities up almost all the time. Now, to help this further, now let's take a pass at our armor mods. Now, to make our elemental wells, we're going to be using flame harvesting. Solar exotic final blows create solar elemental wells. We're going to be using Skyburner's Oath for this video. 2 reasons. 1, it applies Scorch, and secondly, you can use it as Unstoppable Scout Rifle for this season. So because we're using this particular weapon, I decided it'd be best to be making our wells with our weapon from this particular mod. And for Overload, you can use Prometheus Lens as it also applies Scorch, has Overload, and it can also, benefit from flame harvesting. To get more out of flame harvesting, we're now going to use bountiful wells. Elemental well mods that cause you to spawn elemental wells now stack, spawning additional wells for each additional copy of the mod you have equipped. With our Skyburners, we'll now be like 2 elemental wells every 2 kills, and we'll use this to feed into Well of Ordnance. Picking up a solar elemental well grants you additional grenade energy. Multiple copies of this mod increases effect. I use this to help us get our grenade back, as this is super helpful no matter what grenade you decide to use. I do highly recommend using 2 of these in your build for almost instant grenades, alongside Benevolence and Sol Invictus. And another mod that we feed into is Well of Life. Picking up a solar elemental well grants increased regeneration for a short period of time. This is a great mod to have when you don't have a sunspot to give you that restoration. But you have solar wells on the ground, obviously from using Skyburners. I highly recommend that you run this if you're playing with someone who's making a ton of solar wells, no matter how that be, because now you're going to get health from it as well. So like they make the solar well, you're running Well of Life, you're going to get your health back as well. And finally, we're going to look at seeking wells. Elemental wells you create will move across the ground towards nearby players. If you've seen pretty much every single one of my build videos, you know that we normally run this because, quite frankly, I hate chasing down elemental wells that I make. But with this particular build, we're going to make it so that our solar wells that we make will now travel across the ground to our allies, and if they are running Well of Life, which I've, recommended, they are going to get that bonus, and they literally have to do nothing. They have to do nothing to get that, except for have me do the work. So I get a kill with my Skyburners, I make solar wells, my Seeking Wells activates, they go to them, they get their Well of Life active. It's a very easy, very nice little passive healing buff that you can get. So between that, Well of Life, the restoration from sunspots, and if you want to run healing grenades, which again I also recommend, I only use solar grenades to help apply that Scorch. It's going to be really, really nice, and your team is going to be able to stay alive very well from it. One other thing I ran was Revitalizing Blast. This way, when I stunned a champ, it would cause that large solar ignition explosion, do a decent amount of damage to the champion, and if there were any adds nearby, they would die and proc Roaring Flames. Now, a few problems I had with this build was having people run through my sunspots to give me my benevolence, to give me my energy regen, which is also partly caused by the second problem I had was making a steady amount of the sunspots for them to do so, which is why I ran solar grenades. I ran this once with healing grenades, and I found that it was harder to make those sunspots, which is again why I swapped to also using Skyburner's Oath to apply that Scorch to then hopefully get more sunspots to then have them run through it to proc Benevolence, yada yada yada. If you can get a good, rhythm going, you can make a lot of sunspots, though. Like, if I were able to use my Callus Mini Tool with Incandescent, I'd be making a ton of sunspots. The hardest part is, the quote-unquote having Bungie pick our loadouts for the season via the seasonal mods. But, we make do. But that being said, that is the end of the build video. I hope you all enjoyed. I hope you all can take some inspiration from this. If you liked it, leave a like, comment down below, and please consider subscribing and, checking out more of my content in the future. I hope you all have a good week.